This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. 3 Winnipeg women are calling on the province to honor agreements they say it made to pay for a series of surgeries which treat their chronic disease. They say before their surgeries were all completed, Manitoba Health denied the funds to continue treatment and pulled its funding. The CBC's Joanne Roberts takes us through their journey.
To be treated this way, we are feeling less than other individuals.
Twins Kelsey and Kelly Fair were the first in the province to be approved for lipedema surgery. Lipedema is a chronic disease that causes painful fat buildup and swelling in the arms and legs. Manitoba doesn't offer the specialized liposuction surgeries that can help, but patients can travel to the U.S. or Germany for treatment. The sisters say they fought for years and appealed 3 denials from Manitoba Health before they were approved. They traveled to the U.S. in April 2022 for the first of at least 7 surgeries.
Having this surgery meant that we had hope for a future free of pain, where we can function properly.
But a devastating twist just 2 months later. Manitoba Health notified them it would not cover any more surgeries.
You know how traumatizing it was to get the call from Manitoba Health when they verbally told us we were denied? We've already fought this battle. We shouldn't have to fight it again.
Oh my God, they're asking me to pay for almost $167,000 worth of surgery.
When nurse Emma Cloney was diagnosed with late-stage lipedema 2 years ago, it marked the start of an ongoing battle with Manitoba Health.
With the doctors, they wrote referrals to Manitoba Health. They made it incredibly clear, this is what she's got. Here's the confirmation from international specialists. She absolutely needs this treatment.
Eventually, the province agreed to cover the out-of-province surgeries. Cloney said the fair's precedent-setting case was the reason. She completed 3 out of 7 surgeries, and then the province pulled its coverage, a month after it did the same to the fairs, leaving the nurse stunned, in pain, and thousands of dollars in debt after she paid for 1 surgery out of pocket.
I could be healthcare for other people. And when I needed healthcare said, not my problem.
Manitoba Health said it pulled funding for Cloney because it only approved 1 treatment at a time, not the full plan. In a letter, a Manitoba Health official said it consulted with the province's section of plastic surgery and found there wasn't enough objective data that surgery on late-stage lipedema patients is the standard of care. Cloney says she's living proof. After surgery, she was able to walk without supports.
The exponential improvement to my quality of life from these surgeries has been measurable both objectively and subjectively. I'm not tired enough to quit yet.
Cloney and the fairs have appealed Manitoba Health's denial of coverage. Cloney's hearing is at the end of the month, and the twins are still waiting. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's been almost 1 year since 4 members of a family from India, one of them a 3-year-old child, were found frozen in a Manitoba field near the United States border. The tragedy put a spotlight on human smuggling here and the dangers of people illegally crossing into the U.S. in the middle of winter. Now, American border officials say they're seeing more people trying to do the same thing, potentially risking death for the promise of a better life. CBC's Karen Pauls reports.
Picture a group being dropped off here at night, perhaps with children. They're told to walk to that stand of pine trees in the distance, crossing from Manitoba into the U.S. illegally.
This is where we had some recent activity back in early December with some groups that were being smuggled across the border from Canada.
U.S. Border Patrol officers are intercepting growing numbers of migrants and their alleged smugglers. Between October and early December, they caught about 40 people, mostly Mexicans. Those numbers back up to pre-pandemic levels.
You get that call and you just hope that everybody's okay.
Court documents show in one case, the alleged smuggler's vehicle got stuck in the snow. As the weather deteriorated, someone called for help, worried about the 2 children in the group.
They can't survive in these kind of temperatures even more so than adults.
There's a misconception that this is all, cartel driven and that this is somehow related to organized crime, and that's not the case.
This lawyer represents one of the men charged with conspiracy to commit smuggling. His client, a U.S. citizen, has pleaded not guilty.
A lot of these individuals are, either down on their luck. They may be friends or family directly of people that want to cross into the United States.
Immigration advocates say they're not surprised more people are turning to the Canadian border to get into the U.S. Migration on the Mexican border has surged to record levels since 2020.
But if you're able to somehow get to Canada and get to the US from the northern border, it might mean that you might have a little bit more resources. And we have heard also too many stories that are very tragic of people that died trying to cross the border.
The risk is real. Nearly 1 year ago, not far away, an Indian family of 4 was found frozen to death, making this desperate trek in hopes of starting a new life. Karen Pauls, CBC News, near Nichi, North Dakota.
There is still no date set for Winnipeg's Millennium Library to reopen. The downtown branch has been closed for more than a month after a man was fatally stabbed there. Tonight, the head of the union representing library workers says many more incidents go unreported. The CBC's Josh Crabb is standing by in the newsroom now live with the details. Josh, what kind of incidents is the union talking about?
Verbal abuse, threats, and harassment situations the head of CUPE Local 500, Gord Delbridge, says are happening so often workers don't always tell their supervisors. According to data from the city, the majority of incidents happen at the downtown library, which has been closed since December 11th, following the stabbing death of 28-year-old Tyree Kaye. The numbers show staff members reported 66 instances of verbal abuse, 35 threats, and 32 assaults last year. But Delbridge says the actual numbers are likely much higher. The library is allowing people to pick up books they've reserved and to drop off returns, but the full reopening, which was anticipated for mid-January, still hasn't occurred. The city has hired a consultant to conduct a comprehensive review to determine what security measures should be considered. A spokesperson for the city says the library may fully reopen before the consultant's work is complete. Delbridge says discussions with the city have been ongoing.
We want to get the library open as soon as possible. Our members want it open. We know it's a valued public service. Our members love their, the work that they do in serving Winnipeggers, but they want to be able to do it safely. And we want to make sure that, the appropriate protocols are put in place prior to opening.
The city says it doesn't have any additional information to share regarding plans to reopen the library. A spokesperson says the work being done by the consultant will attempt to find a balance between safety and security and making sure the library remains an accessible space for all users.
And thinking of those users, Josh, how are people who rely on the Millennium Library coping with this ongoing closure?
One man who spoke to CBC News outside the library says it's been both difficult and inconvenient. Ima Omri recently immigrated to Winnipeg and says he used the library as a place to study. He worked as a lawyer in Nigeria and wants to get qualified to practice law here in Manitoba. Omri liked using Millennium Library because of its central location.
And I find here a very quiet and calm place where you can sit down, do your research, and read your books.
He says he's been trying to study at home, which he says hasn't been working as well. The city says once it has the consultant's report, an implementation plan will be released to address immediate and short-term measures to increase safety. It says a second phase review and report will address longer-term plans. Janet.
Thank you so much, Josh. That's the CBC's Josh Crabb reporting live from the newsroom. A man who pleaded guilty to manslaughter into the death of a Thompson woman was sentenced to life in prison today. The 5 sisters of Bobby Lynn Moose sat and cried in a Thompson courtroom this morning as someone read their victim impact statements aloud. They described Bobby Lynn as a kind, funny woman. She disappeared in 2019 and was later found dead in an industrial part of Thompson. Jack Clarence Flett pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the case. He will serve life in prison, but he's eligible for parole after 7 years. 101 red dresses hang outside the Brady Road landfill. Protesters put them there yesterday, a visual reminder of their call to search the landfill south of Winnipeg for murdered Indigenous women and girls and others who are missing. CBC spoke with one of the protesters, Cambria Harris, whose mother, Morgan Harris, was one of 4 women believed to be killed by the same man last year. She says the dresses memorialize missing and murdered Indigenous women and pay tribute to her mom.
Red dresses are meant to symbolize and memorialize the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Today we are at the Brady landfill to hang 101 dresses. One dress will be a 10-foot giant dress which is sewn up of all the scraps from the 100 dresses. My mother was a vulnerable Indigenous woman who was living on the streets, and she lived in fear and she had to fight to survive, and so this is a tribute to her because she never had a home. So this is Camp Morgan, and bringing her home would be finding her in the landfill and these other women and all women as well. When our women are taken from us, it affects the whole community, and 4 more lives taken is 4 too many. And how many more times do we have to come out and protest and, put our feelings and emotions out there just to ask the world to treat us as, basic human beings? And every single person in Canada deserves to be safe. And that's really all we're asking.
That's Cambria Harris, one of the protesters who want to see the Brady Road landfill searched for any human remains that may be there. A pile of rubble in Winnipeg's West End has already cost taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars. A fire destroyed a Sherbrooke Street apartment building nearly a year ago. The city ordered the owners to clean up this site by February 15th. Access Credit Union, which holds a mortgage on the property, appealed that order. Today, the city's property committee rejected that appeal. City officials say the fire department has spent more than $37,000 trying to keep that demolition site safe.
So that's where we're going with our order is you are still responsible for your property. The city is doing its best to make sure this order gets fulfilled, but it has been a long, lengthy, and expensive process for all involved.
A spokesperson for Access Credit Union tells the CBC it is only the mortgage holder and is not responsible for cleaning up the site. It is currently negotiating with its insurance company. New records obtained by CBC through a court order offer a glimpse into what happens when a police officer is found guilty of internal misconduct. The CBCI team's Kristen Annabel reports.
Dozens of Winnipeg police officers have faced internal discipline in the last 5 years, and their penalties ranged from a verbal warning to one time where an officer was fired.
This comes after CBC News took the city of Winnipeg to court to fight for the release of this information. CBC News wanted to know what happened to an officer after they were found guilty of misconduct by their professional standards unit. The city argued it was personal information. A judge sided with CBC News and ordered the records released. 5 years of records that show what service default an officer was found guilty of and what their penalty was. One officer was found guilty of 3 service violations. The officer was found guilty of 2 counts of breaching the instruction of the chief of police and 1 count of discreditable content. The officer's penalty was they lost 6 days of pay and was put on probation for a year. The majority of officers lost pay or received a verbal warning. 57 officers were disciplined between late 2014 and early 2020. But what's missing in these records is what actually happened to get the police officer disciplined in the first place. One Winnipeg family had an eye-opening experience with the professional standards unit. Their 14-year-old daughter was accused by an off-duty officer of hitting his car when it was parked in a crosswalk near her high school. When she denied this, he aggressively interrogated her, trying to force a confession, says her father.
My daughter was crying terribly, like terribly. It's like you wouldn't act this way if you didn't feel bad or, so she just couldn't take it. But as I was standing there watching this, he wouldn't even look at me, and I couldn't believe the way he was treating her and the way he was interrogating her. I was really shocked.
They called the professional standards unit to complain and were told they'd never get the apology they wanted and they'd never find out what happened to the officer. It meant police would have to question their daughter again, and they felt that would re-traumatize her. so they abandoned the complaint. They didn't know if anything further happened. The family wants to see more accountability when officers are found guilty of a service default.
Police declined to do an interview for the story, but in a written statement said the reason police disciplinary board hearings are not public is because of current regulations. They said that disclosing the penalty an officer receives would violate privacy laws. And they said the province has signaled they may look at police discipline as it reviews the Police Services Act. Kristen Annable, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The province of Manitoba wants students to stop skipping school. School divisions are being asked to come up with plans by the summer to address chronic absenteeism. Some measures could include a teacher making personal contact with families to ask why their student isn't showing up. Another might be to make sure the student's nutritional needs are being met. This province will also ban students from suspending or expelling students due to absenteeism. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Pauline Clark appreciates the flexibility she says the province is giving divisions.
Those of us who work in schools, we have known that for many of our students, the regular school day, 9 to 3:30, the regular terms, the regular expectations, it's not one size fits all. And what is really wonderful in the announcement today is that that's recognized, is that our students are seen as individuals who come with their own strengths and sometimes their own challenges.
The province also revealed this advertising campaign to encourage students to stay in school. It will run on billboards, online, and in movie theaters. The campaign will cost $500,000. Winnipeggers can embrace the season to skate and ski with free equipment, thanks to a new ski library at the Borkville Community Centre. The community centre has 10 sets of skis and poles, as well as 15 pairs of boots and skis for children. All of this equipment was signed out several times on Saturday, which was its opening day. Take a look.
We have a lot of families in St. James that might not otherwise be able to afford access to ski equipment. So this is just such a great benefit to the community that Borkville Community Centre has come together to offer ski equipment to the community at no cost. Is just a huge benefit not only to the whole community, but especially to our lower income families who should be able to come out and have fun in the winter like everyone else.
I love it. I think it's nice to be able to have more activities to get outside. My feet definitely hurts, like when you put your skates on for the first time in the winter, it's like new muscles, but it's really fun. It's a nice way to kind of get around. This track is awesome. It's very slick. It's a lot easier than when you're not in the track. It's like a little wobbly, but you get going in a good motion, and yeah, it speeds you up.
It's awesome. It's awesome because not only is it an accessible ski place, but for people that are just starting, it isn't intimidating, and we also have great weather out here today. So, and it's not too far from the river, so if you want to actually venture down, but you get a little bit more confident on your skis, you can head down there. I just love being outside, and I love the fitness component of it. And I love the competing part of it as well, and it's something that you can do for life.
The Borkville Ski Library runs 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, so you could go this evening if you wanted to, and also on weekends from 1 to 9 p.m. Our weather specialist Fiona Odlum joins us once again. Not a bad evening for skiing or skating.
Yes, this would be a great night to get out and do a little bit of skiing. But we do have a little freezing rain, which can make the trails a little bit icy. So you just got to make sure you got your wax just right. And so you'll need, I think it's blue. I think it's the blue wax. Her jacket. Don't use the red one.
Don't use the red. I don't know if that's true. Is it
It's true.
Okay, good.
It's true. I love waxing skis. It's when
Drop them by Fiona's house, and she'll take care of them.
I would love that, actually. Let's take a look at our current conditions, where we're sitting right now at -9. That's pretty good. Actually, maybe you do need the red. No, it's so icy out there. You can see all the little ice pellets coming down here. That's not good news. We've been seeing that as an issue for us the last 24 hours, really. It was sporadic over the course of the evening, and it's been that way all day today, too. So we can see that we have light cloud cover here in Winnipeg. We might actually see a little bit of the moon, but not really going to see a whole lot of it. We're going to just zoom in here a little bit. And what we're going to be seeing is just as we move through the next couple of hours, we're going to watch for more fog rolling in, and that's going to be a bit of an issue once again tonight. We do have a nice north wind that is trying to clear things out, but you can see that there is this layer of fog that's moving through here, and that's still going to be a problem for us. A little bit of light snow coming towards us tonight into Winnipeg and the surrounding area, not going to accumulate to a whole lot. The big question everyone's been asking me is, where's winter? So if you look at our jet stream, it's this little line here that goes like this. That should be more blue and purple. That's what we want, a little bit cooler in this time of year. Maybe we don't want it, but that's what's we should have it. And instead we have this green-blue situation going on. This is all that warm air, and we're going to continue to see pulses of warm air. And by Sunday, we should be back to that -2 zone, just like we did yesterday. But then we start seeing a little bit of that blue starting to roll in, and we'll start getting a little bit cooler. -9 at midnight, cloudy, a light wind, north 20 gusting 30. We only cooled to -11 overnight, and we'll stay that way first thing in the morning. And there'll be a bit of fog, to deal with as well. By the time we get to lunchtime, we're going to see a mostly cloudy day ahead, and that wind pretty much stays the same. So any of that light snow that we have could be a little problem in those open exposed areas, but not really a big, huge problem. Okay, for the next 3 days, you can see what I mean here, that warming trend, those pulses of warmth coming to us from the Pacific. So we're gonna warm up again. And by Friday, fingers crossed, we should see the sunshine. So it's gonna be a rather cloudy week again. Well, it was a perfectly blue sky day when Rachel Murphy took this amazing photo. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna put an earworm in your head. Country roads, take me home. Little John Denver for you there, Janet.
Always love a little John Denver. Thank you so much, Fiona.
You're welcome.
The best. Speaking of country roads, a legend in Manitoba country music has died. Clint Dutium died this weekend after battling a rare and aggressive form of cancer. Dutium toured with bands like Seaweed. He won several Aboriginal People's Music Choice Awards. He and some of his brothers formed the band The Younger Brothers, and they performed together for years. They were inducted into the Manitoba Music Hall of Fame last fall. Those close to him say he shared his passion. He loved to do that, often went to remote communities to show people how to play the fiddle. Clint Dutium was only 59 years old. A Selkirk father is fulfilling his son's wish of bringing gaming consoles to kids in hospital. Joey Halderson's son, Corbin, was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy at birth. He spent lots of time in hospital. He brought his son a PlayStation to use during one of his stays in the hospital. The gaming system was vital to helping Corbin get through his time in hospital. Corbin passed away at the age of 17 in October of 2021. His father created Corbin's Wish to fundraise to buy these gaming systems in honor of his son.
He was a kidster. He liked to joke around. He was just a great kid. And even with his illness and he was always positive. He was always so, he wasn't down on the fact that he couldn't get up and walk around. He always made the best of everything. He taught me a lot. He was amazing. He was an amazing boy. He wanted his system. He wanted his PlayStation. I think it was a 4 at that time, not even a 5. But he wanted a PlayStation, and so I went home and I got his PlayStation. I brought it to the hospital. I bought it a 32-inch TV, and I took it to the hospital and I set it all up on that cart for him. And he would play for hours. He would occupy himself for hours. So that in turn gave me and his mom a much-needed break to just to breathe, right? When kids are in the hospital, we're all scared. The kids scared, the parents are scared. And to me, that was the only thing that really got him out of thinking about his muscular dystrophy or thinking about the pain or when they're going to come and pull his blood and all that kind of stuff that he had his gaming system. He always cared about others, and he couldn't understand why the other kids didn't have what he had when he was in the hospital. And I told him, I said, you know, one day my boy, me and you are going to make a difference. And I just didn't have the time. I wasn't given the time long enough to make that difference with him, you know. And it's taken me about a year to feel strong enough, and some days I'm not, but to feel strong enough to do this. You know, it's just something that was very important to him and me, you know, as a parent going through it. But it's time now, you know, it's time to get these systems for these kids. It's called Corbin's Wish, and you know, we have a Facebook page, and I hope people follow it to keep up to date on the different things going on. And we've been getting from cash donations to e-transfers, and we thank everybody on Facebook so we can track to where we are for the money. We're sitting at almost, I think this morning it was $9,900, so we're at $100 away from $10,000, which is wonderful. And we're going to keep going. It was more his idea than mine of you know, I mean, I wasn't a gamer, but he just couldn't understand why the other kids didn't have that, you know, or why he showed up in the hospital and that it wasn't there for him, right? And that's when I told him that we'll definitely look at making a difference, my boy. Like, you know, it's just that he wasn't here long enough for me, and now it's time to make that difference.
The latest national real estate numbers show a sharp drop in both home sales and prices in December. But those lower prices won't necessarily help potential home buyers. We'll look at that after the break. You're watching CBC News Winnipeg. The latest national real estate numbers show a sharp drop in both home sales and prices. These are numbers from December. But while sellers do find themselves at a disadvantage, higher mortgage rates means lower prices don't necessarily help potential home buyers. Nisha Patel takes a closer look.
Hutches and things.
Ghislaine Patenaude is looking for an upgrade.
I don't know if I'm a fan of a single sink.
She sold her Saskatoon condo last month and hopes the time is right to buy a house.
I've been doing a lot of window shopping in 10 years, and it's tough out there.
While sales in the prairies have held up better than in Ontario and BC, higher mortgage rates are turning off many potential home buyers in every market.
If you're a buyer right now and you see, well, if I bought 2 years ago, my mortgage would be $500 less than if I'm buying right now. So in Saskatoon, that's huge.
But as the frenzied bidding wars have vanished, buyers who do want to jump in have more negotiating power.
You have more time to think things through. You can do your due diligence with regards to the bank and the home inspections.
Meanwhile, sellers are getting a reality check. The national average price hit about $626,000 in December, down nearly 12% from the same time the year before.
Sellers are more reasonable. They're not inflating their prices, and they are more reflective of what the market is showing their house to be.
For those who bought at the market's top and now have to sell, it may be a painful process. Take, for example, this home in Whitby, Ontario. The buyer who paid $1.4 million last January just sold for $999,000.
I think we're going to get a lot more listings on the market, and prices are going to start to more appropriately reflect the fundamentals.
Experts say prices may have further to fall, as higher mortgage rates could last through the end of the year.
Are we going to see mortgage rates turn around and see the Bank of Canada quickly cut rates? I don't think we will.
With another interest rate hike forecast for next week and talk of a recession on the horizon, the chill that's taken hold of Canada's housing market could linger well into the spring. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Many federal public servants returned to the office today, some of them for the first time in almost 3 years. They're supposed to start going back to work in the office this week. Under this new hybrid work plan, employees are expected to be working in the office at least 2 or 3 days by the end of March, or between 40% and 60% of their regular schedule. The one-size-fits-all model will come into full effect by March 31st. The three main unions representing federal employees are voicing opposition. Ukrainian officials say at least 40 people were killed in a Russian missile strike on an apartment building on the weekend. It's one of the deadliest attacks in civilians on recent months. Now, the country's foreign minister says he hopes Canada joins with nations who are sending tanks to Ukraine. CBC's Chris Brown has this report from Kyiv.
With so many people still unaccounted for under the pulverized ruins of the Dnipro apartment block, this ranks as one of Russia's most lethal missile strikes on Ukrainian civilians. It's very sad, such a sad shame about all the lost lives. It could have happened to anyone. A humanitarian operation is now trying to ensure everyone has warm clothes, food, and a place to stay.
Minister, nice to see you. Chris Brown.
Hi, I'm Dmytro. Good to meet you.
In the aftermath, we met with Ukraine's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, for an exclusive interview.
You cannot raise your hands and say, okay, we're giving up because you're hitting residential buildings, killing fathers, mothers, children, spreading terror. Because we know if we do that, things will only get worse.
Of late, though, Western countries are now giving Ukraine weapons they were reluctant to just a few months ago, to defend the skies and to drive Russian forces back on the ground with heavy tanks, including possibly Canadian ones.
Canada has Leopard 2 tanks. Have you asked Canadian officials for those tanks?
We definitely expect Canada to join this international tank coalition for Ukraine.
The Kremlin has recently proposed ceasefires and negotiations, but only on its terms, and not if it means pulling Russian forces out of Ukraine.
When you parse the language coming out of the Kremlin, do you see any change when it comes to the possibility of negotiations, peace-wise?
No, that's all crap, everything they're saying. We are not buying it, and more importantly, we are glad to see that more and more countries are not buying it either.
Canadian officials say they have not ruled out sending Leopard tanks to Ukraine, but Germany, which made the tanks, has to approve any transfer, and so far has said no. There's an important NATO meeting set for Friday. Chris Brown, CBC News, Kyiv.
Italian authorities say the country's most wanted fugitive has been arrested after 30 years on the run. Matteo Messina Denaro was detained in Sicily at a private clinic where he was receiving some type of treatment. The Mafia boss went into hiding in the summer of 1993. He was seen as the leader of Sicily's Cosa Nostra, even as a fugitive. Messina Denaro is said to have ordered some of Italy's most heinous killings over the year. The 60-year-old faces multiple life sentences after he was convicted while on the run. Still ahead, we have more news coming your way this evening. Plus, Fiona Odlum will join us with her look at the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. If you're planning to travel, everyone will advise you to get travel insurance if you're traveling internationally. Manulife denied a claim under a man's COVID-19 emergency travel insurance because he didn't get sick enough to require emergency treatment. The man then contacted Go Public, and Carolyn Dunn investigated.
The sun, the surf. For 5 days last March, the Clayson family of 4 enjoyed their slice of Caribbean paradise in Antigua.
The resort was beautiful. The beach was beautiful. It was a nice, relaxing, really nice family time.
It would all come to a grinding halt when Rob Clayson tested positive for COVID-19 2 days before boarding their flight home.
I mean, you're sick, there's nothing you can do, right? So, but I thought that's the purpose of buying insurance, right?
The Claysons had Manulife emergency COVID insurance included in their vacation package. They'd also purchased trip interruption insurance and cancellation insurance through Manulife. So imagine their surprise when
they responded back to me to say, we're not covering you because you didn't seek medical treatment.
Their travel agent looked into their claim and concluded you tested positive for COVID-19 but did not need emergency medical treatment. A COVID-19 positive test result is not considered a treatment. In other words, because Rob Clayson didn't need to go to hospital, his claim was rejected.
Oh, it was awful. I have to say, I don't know how else to say it. It was awful.
But in the policy itself, the definition of treatment includes but is not limited to investigative testing. This personal injury lawyer calls it an unusually clear case of a bad denial.
This is a claim that falls within the 4 corners of the policy. It's one that should be paid out and covered. And it's really not dependent upon how sick the person is.
Manulife declined an interview with Go Public, but after we got involved, they changed course somewhat, reimbursing the cost of Rob Clayson's flight home, as well as a portion of his extra 3 nights at the Antiguan resort, which he spent alone, isolated in his room, sick with COVID. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
Fiona Odlum at cbc.ca. I don't think she'd mind me giving out her email address if it means that she gets more viewer photos.
And I think we have the winner for January with this next picture. It is, quite honestly, the cutest thing you're going to see. It's a ptarmigan.
A ptarmigan.
Look at it. It's like a bird snowball. Yeah, Stacy sent me this picture, and she snapped this picture in Churchill on the weekend. Ptarmigan. There's a P that's silent at the beginning. I had to do a pronouncer online and know how to say it probably. I want to be friends with this thing. Thank you, Stacy. You brought me so much joy. I hope it brought you joy too. All right, we're sitting at -9 degrees at the Forks and in Selkirk, -10 in St. Laurent, -11 in Eli, -8 in Steinbach. Get a little cooler the further north we go into Barons River, -15. Look at Kenora, -1. You've had almost, well, 400 meters of visibility all day today because of the fog and the freezing drizzle. We're getting cooler in Norway House, Thompson Island Lake, but look at Churchill. It's warmer. We have this little pocket just north of Lake Manitoba there that's cold still. We still have this freezing drizzle advisory. This is going to be an issue, and it's going to stay with us for a little while longer in terms of the conditions that we're going to be seeing for that Western Ontario zone. We've got some lows coming through. Going to bring a very light dusting of snow. You're going to watch any of those numbers really pop up, but you're just going to see that that snow is going to be through here, and it's going to be causing some freezing drizzle issues. The exact same scenario through the southern region. We don't see a whole lot. I think we have one in Sioux Lookout. Not a lot happening, but it's still there. Fog is still here. This is our 3rd week of this, in fact, where we're going to continue to see these numbers popping all over the place that are going to be just dropping visibility. Melita, you seem to be struggling the most over the last 2.5 weeks. I'd love some pictures from your area to see how things are going. Okay, so tonight, interesting. All right, so there's a chance of freezing drizzle and snow again. That we saw that on the radar. Temperature sitting at -2 in Fort Frances. So We're going to see freezing drizzle in Winnipeg tonight, but transitioning to flurries with fog. Very, very light flurries. We're going to see the same thing towards that western corner, and we do see a little bit more snow coming in towards Churchill. I think even though my board didn't show it, I think we could see a centimeter there. You're going to see sunshine tomorrow, which is great. A chance of snow as we move all the way down south, and that is going to be mostly isolated to the morning along with the fog. We are going to warm up only a degree into the Winnipeg area, -10 tomorrow as our daytime high, and a very warm 0 degrees in Fort Frances, Janet.
Wow, Fiona, 0. That is mild. It is. Something's happening. Could it be climate change?
Yeah, it could be.
Well, this may be a mild January, but that has not stopped tiny temporary communities from popping up on Manitoba lakes and rivers. Dozens of ice fishing shacks dot Lake Minnedosa, for example, which is about 220 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. These huts are filled with families, friends, and fishing gear. CBC's Chelsea Kemp dropped in for a visit with ice fisher Austin Taylor to find out how you can get into the ice fishing lifestyle.
One of my friends, actually, his shack's just out here. He had one, and I would always come out here and watch him fish and hang out with him. He kind of just taught me how he did it, so then I took inspiration, so I built my own. It's not the most spacious, but I try to keep it as clean as possible. Try to keep it warm. It's actually been very good this year. I've caught 27 fish, I think, out here, and it's been out here for a month, so it's been pretty good. It's definitely a community on the ice, where we try to stay as close as possible to each other, so we don't have to walk too far. So, but we're definitely neighbors out here, and if anyone needs something, we help each other out. Getting to spend time with family, basically, family and friends. If they ever want to come out, they got nothing else to do. That's the best part. You don't need a lot. You don't need a fancy shack like this. You just need someone to drill you a hole, and you need a rod. That's all you need.
It's January. Many people like a dry January. We're going to find out more about their efforts and why after the break. Dry January, also known as Dryuary, began a decade ago in the United Kingdom. It's a month when many people try sobriety for a variety of reasons. CBC's Jim Agapito shows us why Dryuary could help your health.
Okay, it's 2023. Many of us have made resolutions to eat less and get fit. And some of us are trying to get out and be more active. And some of us are examining our relationship with alcohol. Last year, the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction said that any level of alcohol consumption harms Canadians. So what exactly does that mean? Health Canada says Canadians should drink no more than 2 drinks a week. And that's a huge change considering in 2011, they said men should have no more than 3 drinks a day and 15 drinks a week, while women, well, they should have no more than 2 a day and 10 a week. But there are Canadians who are choosing not to drink. I mean, there are shows and entire social movements that embrace being sober. Yay! So what are your options? Well, non-alcoholic drinks or near beers have exploded around the country. But here in Manitoba, it's pretty non-existent. Why?
Hey, I'm Andrew Sukram. I'm the owner and a brewer here at Sukram's Brewing Company.
Okay, Andrew, you gotta tell me, in Manitoba, why don't we have any non-alcoholic beers?
Good question. We've just kind of started doing a lot of research into it. Obviously, non-alcoholics on a lot of people's brains, especially this time of year. A couple reasons. One, non-alcoholic beer, there's only a few ways that you can make it, which is like halting the fermentation, but then it's really difficult to dial in a good recipe that tastes like beer without making it kind of like watered down tea with hops in it. The other way too is the evaporative method, which is sort of basically heating the beer to kind of vacuum distill the alcohol out of the beer. But those 2 processes are pretty expensive to get into the game.
Okay, how expensive is it?
I mean, I just got some quotes from some companies just to kind of see, and we're talking about over $300,000 US just to kind of get into the game. So
$300,000. So that's why there isn't any non-alcoholic beers made here in Manitoba.
It's a space that's normally has been reserved for bigger breweries, macro breweries that are, you know, way bigger than we are, that can afford to get into that space, afford the equipment, and afford to do the R&D that a small craft brewery like us can't do. We're focused on a smaller market segment. They also have, you know, distribution to a lot more places than we do. So.
Now, there obviously is a market for it, right? Because I mean, a lot of people like myself, you know, we all look for that. So I'm wondering, like, there's a market for that. Is that something you can see, like, breweries like yourselves getting into, and, you know?
And yeah, really, the market share for non-alcoholics is just supposed to grow even more than craft beer globally too in the next 5 to 10 years. So they're projecting that the non-alcoholic space will be bigger coming up in the future. So
owning a place, this brewery, and it's a place where people can hang out. Do you find a lot of people not drinking beer here?
We get a lot of questions about non-alcoholic stuff. So we do try to have other options. Kombucha from our friends at Wolseley Kombucha we have. We used to make our own kombucha, soda, stuff like that. So we try to have some options. There's also some non-alcoholic beers that you can buy from out of market that you can have here. So I know a lot of people are doing that as well too, but we do get asked quite a bit for non-alcoholic options. Absolutely.
And Jim will bring you more on this on Wednesday. Your daily lift and 7-day forecast still to come.
Temperature-wise, we are again below average for this week. We're going to see our overnight lows really the defining factor. We should be at minus 23 overnight, looking at a bunch of minus 12s, 10s, and minus 7s. And I'm thankful to say, Janet, we have some sunshine in that long-range forecast because we haven't seen that a lot lately.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Food Fair in St. James is known as a pretty good place to pick up a turkey for Thanksgiving and for Christmas.
And that's one reason folks in the neighborhood are getting such a chuckle over the visitor who's been spending time outside that strip mall.
Here is your Daily Lift. The florist nearby calls her Mrs. Turkey. Here she is checking out the coffee shop before heading to Food Fair. Now you might think frequenting a food store known for its poultry is not the smartest move for a plump turkey, but this is a turkey protection zone apparently. Turns out this turkey has a bit of a routine. She shows up around 9:30 each morning. Her fans take photos, but as you can see, they give her space.
Does she have her own Instagram page? Because I would follow that.
Probably does. Jackie Schultz has her on Facebook, that's for sure. Christine, the flower shop owner, says Mrs. Turkey, who has lots of nicknames actually, brings lots of joy to the neighborhood. The bird is the latest St. James celebrity. In fact, Christine is not certain who's more popular now, the turkey or the other neighborhood celebrity, Mayor Scott Gillingham.
No.
It's true. And Bennett, thank you for that video.
Thank you. That's amazing.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.